Welcome to Session 1. In this session, we'll focus on 5 major climate hazards and how they affect assets, operations, and communities. You'll learn how to identify these hazards, understand their impacts, and communicate risk clearly to decision makers. Session 1 builds the analytical foundation. By the end of this session, you will be able to apply the Hazard Exposure Vulnerability Framework to real assets and regions. You will distinguish how extreme heat, flooding, wildfire, drought, and storms create different operational pressures. You will identify how hazards interact to create compound risk. You will interpret hazard indices as operational triggers, not just technical categories. And you will connect hazard exposure to financial and governance implications. This is the logic that underpins defensible climate decision-making. Climate risk comes from 3 things working together: the hazard, the exposure, and the vulnerability. The hazard is the event itself, like a flood, wildfire, or storm. Exposure is what sits in the path of that event: people, buildings, equipment, or infrastructure. Vulnerability is how well those things can withstand the impact or recover afterward. Here's a simple example. 2 facilities face the same hurricane. One has elevated equipment and a backup power system. The other has older infrastructure and no redundancy. The hazard is the same, but the outcomes are very different. This framework helps you see where the real risk is, not just where hazards are located. We'll use this approach throughout the masterclass. This masterclass focuses on 5 major climate hazards. Each one creates different types of stress on people, buildings, and systems. Extreme heat happens when temperatures stay very high for long periods. It puts pressure on power grids, transportation, and public health. Drought occurs when rainfall is very low for an extended time. Water supplies drop, soils dry out, and wildfire risk increases. Flooding happens when too much water collects in one area. Heavy rain, storm surge, or overflowing rivers can overwhelm roads, buildings, and drainage systems. Wildfire is fast-moving fire through dry vegetation. It threatens homes, roads, power lines, and air quality. Severe storms bring strong winds, heavy rain, and sometimes tornadoes or storm surge. They can damage structures and interrupt essential services within minutes. These hazards often interact. Drought dries out vegetation and increases wildfire risk. Heavy rain after a long dry period can cause flash flooding. When hazards stack like this, the overall impact becomes much stronger. That's why we need to map them together, not one at a time. Extreme heat puts pressure on many systems at once. Infrastructure feels it quickly. Power grids face heavy demand, and outages become more likely. Roads can soften or buckle, and both rail and aircraft performance decline in very hot weather. Businesses see higher electricity costs as cooling systems run harder. During peak heat, brownouts or blackouts can interrupt operations with little warning. Communities feel the health effects. Outdoor workers face risks like heat exhaustion and heat stroke. Older adults, low-income households without reliable cooling, and people with health conditions are especially vulnerable during long heat waves. Extreme heat creates energy, operational, and health challenges at the same time, so planning needs to address all 3. Drought develops slowly, but the impacts are immediate once it takes hold. Infrastructure begins to shift as soils dry out. Roads can crack, underground pipes may break, and reservoirs drop, which reduces hydropower output. For businesses, drought limits water supply. Agriculture struggles first, but any industry that relies on steady water, like manufacturing, food processing, or data cooling, may need to slow down or adjust operations. Communities feel the effects through water restrictions, higher food prices, and increased wildfire risk. Dry, smoky conditions can also worsen air quality. Because drought builds over time, monitoring water levels and soil conditions early helps spot rising risk before major disruptions occur. Flooding causes more economic damage than any other climate hazard. Infrastructure feels the impact right away. Drainage systems overflow, and roads and bridges can shut down within minutes. Electrical rooms and equipment in low areas often take on water and fail. For businesses, flooding is highly disruptive. Inventory and equipment can be destroyed, and operations may stop for days or weeks. Hurricane Harvey showed how far these impacts can reach. Flooding forced the nation's largest refinery in Port Arthur to close, along with several others. Fuel supplies tightened, and gasoline prices rose across the country. One regional event created national consequences. For communities, the challenges are immediate and long-lasting. Many households don't have flood insurance, especially outside official flood zones. Flooded roads make it harder to reach healthcare, groceries, or emergency services. Flooding hits fast and can take a long time to recover from, which makes advanced planning essential. Wildfires affect far more than the area that burns. Infrastructure is highly vulnerable. Power lines can fail or spark new fires. Roads often close during evacuations. Communication towers may burn, making it harder to send emergency alerts. Businesses feel the impact quickly. Facilities may close, revenue drops, and supply routes are disrupted. There is also real liability risk. For example, PG&E faced over $30 billion in claims after its equipment caused the 2018 Camp Fire. Smoke can halt operations even when the fire is miles away, and insurance costs usually rise after major events. Communities face poor air quality, displacement, and the loss of homes and essential services. Recovery takes time, planning, and reliable support. Severe storms move quickly and can cause major damage in a short time. Infrastructure is usually hit first. Strong winds tear off roofs, knock down trees, and bring down power lines. Along the coast, storm surge can flood key facilities and leave long-lasting damage. For businesses, storms often lead to sudden shutdowns. Some sites need to evacuate with little notice. Buildings can be damaged by wind or debris, and power outages can halt operations immediately. For communities, evacuations create displacement. People without transportation or with medical needs face the most challenges. Families with pets may also struggle to leave quickly. Severe storms escalate fast, so response plans must be simple, clear, and ready to activate. Mayfield, Kentucky candle factory owner faced lawsuits after workers were threatened with termination if they left before the disaster struck. Some places experience worse impacts than others, even when they face the same hazard. This comes down to differences in vulnerability. First, some areas are exposed more often or for longer periods. Frequent heat waves or long droughts put steady pressure on people, infrastructure, and services. Second, the landscape itself matters. Areas with limited water, dry vegetation, or poor soil conditions have a harder time absorbing or buffering climate stress. Two locations can face the same hazard, but respond very differently. Third, the people who live there make a difference. Households with fewer resources have less ability to prepare, evacuate, or recover. Older adults may have health or mobility challenges. People who rely on powered medical equipment face immediate risk during outages. Language or access barriers also affect how quickly people receive help. These factors often overlap, and when they do, impacts increase. Hazards can also stack. For example, in California, long droughts dry out vegetation, while heat waves intensify fire conditions. When multiple hazards line up, the overall risk becomes far greater than any single event on its own. This graphic shows how climate vulnerability is determined by the combination of climate hazard exposure, geographic/environmental sensitivity, and socioeconomic conditions that shape a community's ability to cope and recover. Hazard indices take complex measurements and convert them into simple categories that support quick decisions. The Air Quality Index is a good example. It shows how safe the air is, especially during wildfire smoke events. When levels move from moderate to unhealthy, agencies may advise people to stay indoors, use masks, or limit outdoor activity. Schools may close. For businesses, the AQI helps decide when to shift outdoor work or move teams to remote operations. The U.S. Drought Monitor works the same way. It ranks drought from D0, which is abnormally dry, up to D4, which is exceptional drought. These categories trigger real actions. At D2, or severe drought, federal assistance programs begin. Farmers become eligible for support, and lenders start reassessing agricultural risk. Water allocation decisions often follow these classifications as well. The main point is simple. Hazard indices turn technical data into clear, shared signals that guide planning and response. Now let's look at the tools used to rate wind and storm strength. The enhanced Fujita scale measures tornado intensity. It ranges from EF0 to EF5 and is based on the damage left behind. An EF0 tornado may break branches or damage shingles. An EF5 tornado can level well-built homes and toss vehicles long distances. These ratings help improve warning systems and guide wind-resistant building standards. The Saffir-Simpson scale is used for hurricanes. It ranks storms from Category 1 to Category 5 based on wind speed. Category 1 storms cause limited damage. Category 5 storms cause catastrophic damage with winds over 157 miles per hour. Emergency plans often shift at Category 3 and above when evacuations and major resource movements begin. These scales also influence building codes. For example, in Florida, construction standards are tied to the wind speeds associated with different hurricane categories. The key point is that both scales provide clear thresholds. They help planners, engineers, and emergency teams make fast, consistent decisions before and after a storm. To help organizations quickly understand which climate hazards matter most to them, we use a simple hazard profiling checklist. It focuses attention on the hazards most likely to disrupt operations and the thresholds that trigger action. This keeps risk monitoring practical and aligned to day-to-day decision-making. The checklist focuses on 5 steps. Step 1. Identify relevant hazards. Start by listing the hazards that realistically affect your location, such as extreme heat, coastal flooding, severe storms, or wildfire. Use recent climate records and local projections to confirm whether each hazard is chronic, seasonal, or event-driven. Step 2. Define exposure. Determine what is actually at risk. This could include people, infrastructure, supply chains, IT assets, or essential services. The more specific you are, such as naming buildings, equipment, or vulnerable populations, the easier it becomes to map risk. Step 3. Assess vulnerability. Evaluate factors that make the exposed assets more sensitive. For example, older buildings, limited cooling capacity, or outdoor workforces elevate vulnerability. For communities, this may include age, income, disability status, or lack of air conditioning access. Step 4. Set operational thresholds. This is where the assessment becomes practical. Define the thresholds that require action. For example, heat index greater than 38 degrees Celsius triggers modified work hours. 150 millimeters of rainfall in 24 hours triggers facility flood checks. Fire danger index, extreme, triggers shutdown of outdoor operations. Clear thresholds reduce uncertainty and create predictable decision points. Step 5. Define required actions. For each threshold, outline what must occur, adjusting operations, activating cooling shelters, deploying backup pumps, notifying staff, or shutting down equipment. These actions become the core of your resilience playbook. To make this real, consider a coastal logistics facility that developed a simple hazard profile for heat and flooding. Extreme heat threshold. The facility set a trigger of 38 degrees Celsius, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, because equipment failure rates rose sharply above that point. When temperatures exceed this threshold, the operations team shifts loading work to early morning, activates shade structures, and increases heat monitoring for staff. Flooding threshold. The site identified zero point 0.6 meters of local road flooding as the point where delivery trucks cannot safely enter. When this threshold is forecast, the facility accelerates outbound shipments, reroutes trucks, and moves critical stock to higher shelving. Why this matters? These thresholds are simple, measurable, and directly linked to operational decisions. They help teams move from general climate awareness to concrete, predefined actions that reduce downtime and protect workers and assets. A short, clear hazard profile like this ensures decision makers know exactly when to act and what to do, rather than relying on ad hoc judgment during an event. Session 1 leaves you with 5 strategic insights. First, climate risk is not the hazard. It is the interaction between hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. Second, compound events drive the largest losses. Third, thresholds convert climate science into operational action. Fourth, infrastructure vulnerability is often systemic, not isolated to one asset. And finally, governance failures are often the most expensive failures. Climate risk becomes costly when oversight fails.